Before we begin this super fun episode, we want to introduce you to an awesome new podcast from one of our past guests, the multiracial superstar, Sharon Mariguez. Peace, Planks, and Prana is dedicated to the yoga experience for students, teachers, and anyone curious about connecting body, breath, and mind. Hosts Melissa Payne Bradley and Sharon Reese Mariguez explore yoga's physical, energetic, and cultural aspects. Peace represents unity and community, Planks represents the physical practice, and Prana represents the life force connecting us all. Topics include navigating our relationship with our bodies, finding your voice as a teacher, and maintaining a gratitude practice, and so many more awesome topics. Find Peace, Planks, and Prana on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Go check it out today and subscribe.
It's a lot for me to have to look into what I look like, who I am, and then really think about okay, well, I know these aren't my parents, but where are my birth parents? What was that story? What was going on? What did happen? Are there Jewish people in Peru? You know what I mean? There was a whole thing that kind of spewed after that. And my mom was always, like I said, my mom is a brilliant woman, and she's always been very in your face and strong-minded about stuff. So her thing was always you're a Jewish woman, we've done this, we've been persecuted, you will stand up and you will say what you have to say and you'll be okay. And I mean, I'm grateful for that, because it really was a push that I needed, because I remember coming home kind of devastated, and she wasn't don't cry, but she was we're tough, we were built for this, this is what your grandmother, endured. This is what your great grandmother, this is what our family members that, were victims in the Holocaust. This is what our family has done for thousands of years, hundreds of years. You're just going to have to stand by it. And this is your first experience with it, and it sucks, but this is what it is. And I think it did kind of empower me for a brief period of time to be okay, what is this really defined as? Am I really looking that different? But then again, I was in 7th grade, and, other things came up and other things came more important. And I found groups of people that looked more like me. And I pushed further and further away, I think, from trying to define my Latina heritage.
Welcome to episode 25 of the Multiracialverse podcast. Today, we're diving into a conversation with the remarkable Heather Reese, a personal injury lawyer based in Philadelphia, whose journey is as inspiring as it is multifaceted. Born in Peru and adopted into a Jewish family in Delaware, Heather's life story is a profound exploration of identity, culture, and resilience. Growing up in a predominantly Jewish community, she faced the complexities of navigating her Latina heritage while embracing the traditions of her adoptive family. In this episode, Heather shares her journey of self-discovery from confronting racism and embracing her ADHD diagnosis to finding empowerment through therapy and community mentorship. She speaks passionately about the need for greater visibility and representation of Latino women in the legal field and beyond, while also championing body positivity and the plus-size movement. Whether advocating fiercely for her clients or promoting Latina-owned businesses, Heather serves fashion and justice with unmatched confidence. Join us for a heartfelt and empowering conversation that reminds us of the importance of living boldly, embracing grace, and breaking barriers. Let's get started. Hi, Heather. Welcome to the Multiracialverse. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, me too. I've been tracking you on Instagram, and I love your content and your attitude and perspective. And yeah, I can't wait to share your story. And it's one of the things we try to capture here on the podcast is that I call it the Multiracialverse just because I came up with it. I thought it was a cool name. So it's I'm not going to ditch it to mean anything other than it's kind of encapsulates all these different dynamics of people's identity and the journey through their identity that we get to hear when I have guests on. So let's start out from the beginning here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. So I was born in Peru. I'm adopted, and I was adopted when I was a baby, so I don't remember my time in Peru. I wasn't there for very long. So I was brought to America, and I was adopted by a Jewish mother and a like pseudo Christian hippie dad. And I was brought up in like a very like Jewish community. I went to Jewish school, and yeah,
And
and
where
then
was
I
that?
in Delaware. So I grew up in Delaware and Pennsylvania.
Was there a reason why they decided to adopt?
Yeah, so from my understanding, I have siblings. I have a brother and a sister, and they're both older than me. So my parents adopted a child from Honduras, and they adopted me and my sister from Peru. We're not blood sisters, but we were both adopted from Peru. We're different ages and from different parts of the city, different parts of the country, I mean.
Wow.
And yeah, from my understanding, my mother did try to have children, and she was unable to. She also did adopt she adopted us with like I think at the time her job was like also promoting adoption, and she actually ended up adopting us
Okay.
with other people at her job.
And what does that mean? Adopting you with other people at her work?
I think they like went on like I think it was like a bunch of people from the work. They were obviously with other
Mm-hmm.
people as well, but I know that she went with somebody else who she had also worked with or was at the same company. And they also
Right
adopted
on.
children from Peru.
Oh wow! And so why Peru? Did you ever ask? You know, and obviously it sounds like your brother, who's from Honduras, was probably adopted from Honduras and not he was not born in Peru, correct?
Yeah, he was born in Honduras and he's older, so he was adopted first. He's gonna get some out of me. I think he's 38, 39. I don't remember his exact his exact age. But yeah, so they had already adopted. I never really asked why Peru, actually, now that you mention it, because I think my sister had already been from Peru. So maybe they just liked her so much they were like, we'll get another one from Peru.
Do you feel that now growing up and kind of looking back, did they have an affinity toward Latin America at all in any way, shape, or form that you've noticed or talked about?
You know, it's so weird. I think that a lot, and like like when if you meet my parents, you'd feel like no. So I don't I don't think so. I mean, I think my dad is like the kindest man in the world. My dad is like the
Aww.
nicest. You could tell he grew up in a very hippie environment in Humboldt, California. And he's just like a lover. He's just like the nicest man and doesn't really see color, doesn't see race. And I think that he probably played a big role in it. I think that, you know, my mom is a very strong, outspoken woman, and I think they just kind of landed on something. They've never told me that there was a reason they picked us from those countries. I think I had had conversations with my mother before where I think getting children in Europe was a little bit harder at the time, and there was a
Mhm.
big push for
Yeah.
children out of Latin America.
Right on. And so what did yeah, I mean there's a lot of things going on as far as I think you mentioned that you had your father was a loosely Catholic, your mother was Jewish, and they were living in Delaware. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up with the dynamics in your household. And then, really quick to clarify too, what was the age difference between your brother, your brother, and your sisters, so the listener can get an idea of who was at home around the same time growing up together?
Yeah, so we're all 2 years apart, and we didn't all grow up together. My parents got divorced when I was 10, so we didn't all necessarily grow up together. My sister ended up moving with my dad, and my mom ended up, me and my brother were with my mom. So me and my brother grew up more together than me and my sister. I mean, we grew up when we were super young together, but when I was around 10, I think she's 2 years older than me, so she was 12, and she really wanted to
Mhm.
go with my dad, so she was more with my dad, and we didn't. I saw my dad a lot, but it wasn't like that frequent. So I wouldn't say we really grew up together, especially because my dad got remarried and his
Mhm.
new wife had children, and they were closer in age to her. So like she
Oh
got
wow,
really close
okay.
with that family, and they had a daughter that was closer to my age. So, you know, I became close with her. So it wasn't like necessarily we all really grew up together. I would say me and my brother grew up together, but he's 4 years older than me. So we weren't really
Okay.
doing the same stuff. We also never went to the same school. So My
As
mom,
I say, that's enough difference to be in different schools too. So,
yeah, no, and I went to a private school, so they didn't go to private school. So my mom, we were part of the Jewish community. We were part of the JCC in Delaware, and we were part of the Jewish community. I guess it was like kindergarten. I went to Albert Einstein Academy, which is a private school in Delaware. It's a private Jewish school. It's a really amazing school. Honestly, I look back at my time there, and I'm so grateful for it. You learn 2 years ahead of your grade. They have something, or at least they did when I went there, that was
wow.
called the spiral curriculum. So they introduce you into philosophies and concepts that you wouldn't know at that time. But so when you do learn them, they're not foreign to you. And they were just so advanced technology wise and really like really amazing. I mean, they were a good school. So I went to that private school. I went there from kindergarten. I went to public school for a single year for first grade. And then my mom took me out and sent me back to the private school. And I had only been around the same 12 kids my entire life. So Albert Einstein is a
Wow.
very private, small school. And there was
12
12 kids
kids,
and
huh?
12
Wow.
kids. And you're with the same 12 kids from kindergarten till sixth grade if they stay there. Maybe
Yeah.
here and there one new person came in, but it
Yeah.
was a very, very tight knit group. And yeah, I mean, it was an amazing upbringing, but it was very closed in that was the only people that I had been around, right? So I had never been around other
Hmm.
Latinas. I had only been around other Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's so much I want to ask, but I'm going to start with something that you shared with me before we got on camera. Is that you mentioned that when your parents, when you were really young, they had brought back toys from Peru, and you actually did they decorate the room with things
Yeah,
from
all of
Peru?
our
Also,
rooms,
yeah.
yeah, all of our rooms had
Eh,
like a map of our country. So like we had a map of Peru, I had a map of Peru, my brother had a map of Honduras. We had the llama blankets, so the blankets made out of llama
Oh
fur.
yeah.
And they each brought back a jewelry box for us that was filled with different things from our country. So there was like change, there was like dollars in there, there was like little trinkets. They had like toys that were from Peru. I know me and my sister had that. I'm pretty sure my brother had that too. I can't say for sure, but I do know that he had the map in his room as along with like a tapestry from that country.
Or did they talk to you about both being adopted and then also being born in another country when you were young enough, to understand maybe what they were talking about?
It's so weird. My first husband was adopted, and they never talked about it. And he found out he was adopted from his brother. And it was such a weird thing for me to hear because I had never, I was like, my parents never told me. We just knew. I don't remember a
Oh,
distinct
wow.
conversation. I think it was just so openly talked about. I think it was that, I knew my sister and brother were adopted, so I didn't think that I wasn't. And then we all had the same things in our rooms. And also, like, our parents don't look anything like us. So my dad's like 6'7" or like 6'5" and like
Oh, my
a
God.
tall white man. And my mom's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
short woman, a white woman from New York. So I mean, we didn't we didn't look like them too. So I mean, I think that was also very telling. But I think our parents were always very open and honest about it. I remember doing school projects and stuff, and my mom always being like, these are your grandparents, her parents, and this is what it is. Like, yeah, you're adopted, but we're your parents. Those are your birth parents.
Yeah,
Like, he was very clear on the difference between a birth parent and a parent. And
yeah,
it was never like a deep conversation we had. It was like a common understanding that we all kind of knew. And I'm sure that's because of the way they raised us. I'm sure it's because they were so open about it, honest about it, and like
yeah,
kind about it. It was never a thing that we felt like we weren't theirs. And I do remember my mom, I think,
yeah.
at one point saying, adopted children are grown in your heart and not your stomach.
Oh,
Um, and I always thought that was super, super sweet because I never really
yeah, it's
understood,
beautiful.
those concepts of, somebody being, of actually having a baby. Like, I had always kind of been like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's so strange. Genetics are so weird when you see people that look like each other because I'd only been around people that didn't look like me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, were you the only Latinx Latina in like your class? What was the demographic of Delaware? I know very little about Delaware.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I didn't even identify as like a Latina back then. I think that even when we filled out paperwork, we probably didn't even write I was Latina. Like
Yeah.
I didn't see any difference, right? Like I knew I was tanner, but there were a lot of kids in my class that were Israeli that were tan. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like in your face. And you're also dealing with children. So children don't really understand a different dynamic. And I think like being around, being in the Jewish community, you're already dealing with a very oppressed group of people too. So there
Yeah.
wasn't like a
Yeah.
you're not one of us and mentality ever. Like it was it was always like I was just one of everybody else. I really, looking back, I don't think that there were any Latina people in my class. I look at pictures of them and there weren't. There was like one Christian girl. And I remember that was very taboo because she was Christian and she
Yeah.
went to our school. But her mom was actually a teacher at her school. I'm still really good friends with her. She's a great girl, and her mom was amazing. She was like a private one-on-one teacher for you if you had like learning disabilities, and I had ADHD, so
Yeah.
she was always like one of those extra teachers that helped you. But yeah, no, I think that not being Jewish would have been more of a taboo thing in our school than being any other race. Like I think
Wow.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just like not the thing that anybody ever looked at. But looking back, like I said, I was probably the only Latina girl there.
And did you and your brother, you say your parents split up and your older sister went with your father? Did you and your brother, do you remember any conversations around, him being from Honduras and you being from Peru? Did you talk about that at all? Was there any like kids sometimes, it's interesting now. I feel like, especially talking to people about it, like we're talking about this type of stuff so much more. And I think we talk about it with our children, my wife and I, like way more than my parents even alluded to anything, being multiracial or mixed. So it's always interesting to see if that stuff, those types of topics or themes ever came up when kids were young.
I didn't. I remember fighting, and when we would fight, we would say very terrible things to each other about being adopted. It was like a thing that we spewed at each other. It was never a thing that we like actually thought that we were different. So I don't really
Mm,
believe we ever had like in-depth conversations about it. Um, because it wasn't really a thing that we talked about growing up. Like it was known, it was in your face, it was there. Our parents called, like said I was Peruvian, they said he was Honduran. Um, but we were in such a white environment that in a white Jewish environment when we were with my mom
yeah.
that it wasn't anything that like we even, I mean, at least I didn't acknowledge it. I don't remember him acknowledging it. He's older than me, but I don't remember
Yeah.
us ever having a conversation being like, you know, we're both adopted, mom's not our mom, our birth mom. Like, I don't really ever really remember doing that. I don't remember doing that with my sister either. And my sister was raised in such
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
environment than me.
And you say you shared once again prior, you shared some answers to some questions just so I could get to know you better. That your first, I guess, interaction with somebody being racist towards you was being anti-Semitic towards you.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it was in middle school, and I'll never forget it because I was wearing a Jewish star on my neck, and
Mm,
somebody said, you can't be Jewish. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, you don't look Jewish. You're not Jewish. That's not real. And then they went on to spew some
yeah.
hate, anti-Semitic hate.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
said, I remember going home that day and being like, can I not be Jewish? Am I not Jewish? Is that like, no, I'm definitely Jewish. I was bat mitzvahed. Like, I was bat mitzvah. I could speak Hebrew at that time too. So I was like, no, I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
Like, I know Jewish people that can't speak Hebrew. Like, I was bat mitzvahed. I did everything. I did the mitzvahs. Like, I did everything I had to do. So why would they think that?
Yeah.
And I do remember being like, I remember saying something to my mom and being like, that's so crazy. And she was just like, sometimes people are closed-minded and small-minded, and you know who you are. Our people have been persecuted before. You stand up for who you are. You did the right thing by saying you are. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was definitely like it was very in my face because I had never been told I looked Latina, right? Like I had never been told I looked Hispanic.
Yeah.
I never saw myself as looking Hispanic. And then that comment kind of pushed me down a road of being like, do I look different? Is there characteristics about me that don't look like everyone else around me?
A lot of times parents just don't know how to talk about it, you know what I'm saying? So it sounds like your mother, when that happened to you, she, had an open conversation with you about how to deal. How did that make you? Did that you feel like that empowered you going forward as far
I think
as
it definitely,
I am?
yeah, I think it definitely did in terms of me saying, I'm not going to, maybe I need to look deeper into what I'm defined by. And that's a lot to hit a kid in seventh grade with, right? Like, it's a lot for me to have to look into what I look like, who I am, and then really think about, like, okay, well, I know these aren't my parents, but where are my birth parents? Like, what was that story? Like, what was going on? Like, what did happen? Like, are there Jewish people in Peru? You know what I mean? Like, there was a whole thing that kind of spewed after that. And my mom was always, like I said, my mom is a brilliant woman, and she's always been very like in your face and strong minded about stuff. So her thing was always like, you're a Jewish woman, like we've done this, we've been persecuted, you will stand up and you will say what you have to say and you'll be okay. And I mean, I'm grateful for that because it really was like a push that I needed, because I remember coming home like kind of devastated, and she wasn't like, don't cry, but she was like, we're tough. We were built for this. Like this is what your grandmother, endured. This is what your great grandmother, this is what our family members that, were victims in the Holocaust. Like this is what our family has done for thousands of years, hundreds of years. You're just going to have to stand by it. And this is your first experience with it, and it sucks, but this is what it is. And I think it did kind of empower me for a brief period of time to be like, okay, like what is this really defined as? Like, am I really looking that different? But then again, I was in seventh grade, and other things came up and other things came more important, and I found groups of people that looked more like me. And I pushed further and further away, I think, from trying to define my Latina heritage. I hung out with a lot of people that were Italian, because that was the big in the community that I was in. There wasn't really, once I got to middle school, there wasn't really a lot of Jewish people in the area that I was in.
And was that a little bit bigger population in the school, or was that in the same school but?
No, it was a completely different school. So we moved. When my parents got divorced, we moved, and we were in Pennsylvania, and I went to school in Pennsylvania.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
And I went to a big public school in Pennsylvania, and
Which
there
city?
wasn't very many Jewish people. It's like Garnet Valley.
Okay, is it near one of the? Is it a suburb, or is it near one of the bigger cities, or?
It's a suburb. It's like a real suburb. It's like a blue ribbon school. They were a great school. Like, I'm not going to say anything bad about them. They were actually a really good school. But no, it's a suburb, and it's like a whole bunch of really like upper middle class suburban kids. And if there was a Jewish community there, it was never one that I saw or was a part of.
Yeah.
Most of my friends were Christian and Catholic, and most of my friends were like Italian and white. So I didn't really have I didn't meet like Spanish people there either.
Yeah, that's tough. That's interesting too. I think I asked you the question when I sent it to you, but is the adoption by a Jewish woman of a child, regardless of the child's ethnicity, still considered a birthright adoption? Like, are they considered like you can still get the birthright? Did you go to Israel?
I did not do the birthright. I could have still done the birthright.
Okay.
They view, from my understanding and my experience in the Jewish community, they view an adopted child the same way they view a natural child in terms of who you're following.
That's awesome.
Right? Like, at least that's all I've ever been told. If there's something different and someone finds out about it, comments on it, might be, but that's all I'd ever been told, and that's all I'd ever experienced, because I was in pretty conservative Jewish communities. It wasn't even something we ever talked about. Like, that was the thing. Like, I think I might have done one school project when I was a kid in that class where, like, I said that I was adopted, but I mean, even then, like it was never came up in conversation. It was never something I talked about in school. And I had gone to Jewish school, you know, Albert Einstein's a private Jewish school. So I went there. And then even after, when I was in middle school, I had to go to like a Hebrew school. So, I mean, even in Hebrew school, I was always treated as the same. Like, you know, I got bat mitzvahed. My grandmother made me a beautiful talit. And I had a Hebrew name. So it wasn't like, I don't think the Jewish community ever viewed me differently in my understanding, especially because, you know, I went to pretty private schools where I learned Hebrew. Like I wasn't just a Sunday school kid, you know, we were deep in it.
Yeah. So I, you know, as we transition here to, you know, your teenage years, do you, I'm going to ask you a question about, from your experience, how do you feel adults or parents should talk to their children about, you know, ethnicity, about, I guess, you know, they call it transracial adoption is one term they use for individuals who adopt from a different ethnicity or race. Do you think parents, you know, it's beneficial for parents to talk to the children about it? I mean, it sounds like your experience was a little bit different, but do you wish they would have spoken more about, you know, your Peruvian side or other things like that?
I think that for me, the biggest thing, more so than talking about a lot, is just acknowledging that it existed. I think I've met so many people that didn't tell their children that they were adopted, and then they can speak about a traumatic moment when they learned the reality of what it was. And I am so grateful to my parents that they didn't do that. Now, I've seen the positive side to that too, in ways where I think that, like, like I had said previously, you know, my ex-husband didn't know about it, and his mom is the greatest woman on this earth. She is my best friend. I love her to the end of time. And I can understand why she didn't, right? Like, her child looked just like her. She adopted a white child from Romania. So they looked alike. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't really a defining difference, where for us, there was a real defining difference in the way that we looked. So I can't imagine my parents trying to hide it. But because it would have been very clear. But I think what I would say is just be open and honest, because honesty really is so important to children. It's so important. And I've always been on the collective and the mindset that honesty is the best policy when it comes to raising a child. And maybe that's controversial. Maybe some people don't believe that. But for me, I just think I couldn't have imagined having a traumatic event in addition to already learning that I'm adopted, but also thinking that my parents didn't tell me the truth for so long. Like, that to me is something I couldn't imagine. So while my parents didn't sit us down and have, you know, Peruvian food for us, once a month, or read us, take us to Peruvian restaurants or have us go to Peruvian festivals, they were honest about it and they were open about it. And, you know, that I would say that would be the way that I think parents should do it, in my opinion. In my opinion, just be open and honest. And if you could bring their culture into it, I would say, like, I wish my parents had us learn Spanish. I wish they had, brought us and introduced us to other Latinas in the community when we were growing up. I think it could have been amazing. We might have all really viewed ourselves differently than we do now. But in the same notion, I think I turned out okay. I think my sister and brother did.
Yeah. It sounds like your parents loved the hell out of you too. So, like, that's so awesome. Like, they sound like a really loving couple, and that's probably supersedes almost everything, you know, because it could have been, you know, I think that having that place where you feel safe is so important too. So it sounds like there was a little bit of a crack in your shell around the 7th grade where you started to think about, what is Peru like? What goes on in Peru? Are there Jewish people in Peru? When did it really take off? And I was going to ask you too, at any time, did you ever just tell people I'm Italian, you were hanging around Italian people? Because I know it's interesting. We talked to people, and it's like, you know, they're just like, you know, everybody just keeps calling me, you know, X, but I'm really, Asian, and they're all calling me, they all think I look Hispanic. So I just went along with it,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I went along with being Italian for a multitude of levels. One, because I think that somewhat in the community that I was in, there was a little bit of a deep-rooted racism. And I think I kind of got whiffs of it. And it was safer and easier to say that I was Italian because everyone already assumed I was, right? So it was safer and easier to just not say I'm Italian, but not correct when somebody just assumed it. I think that was a bigger thing for me in my middle school years because, like I said, all my friends were Caucasian and Italian. There was really, I think I corrected a few people along the way because my mom, her type of love is very straight, like in your face, straightforward. She is a blunt woman. She is not the softest, not the sweetest, but she's brilliant and she is in your face. And she was always very much like, you be proud of who you are. And I think that was for me, like 7th grade, 8th grade. It was an interesting dynamic because, like I said, I was more passive than anything else. There was a few times if somebody had said something that was super, controversial, I would say, whoa, whoa, whoa. But 7th and 8th grade Heather, I would never go back to because I was probably one of the worst kids in terms of like, my parents getting divorced, trying to find myself, and then trying to fit in a community that necessarily doesn't always have kind intentions towards people of a different race. And it's easier to go along with than to have everybody look at you, right? It's easier when you're a child to say, okay, I'm just going to keep going along with what they're saying instead of, because then if they're looking at these people, they're not looking at me. And I think that was, for me, the biggest thing. Like, I look back on regret with so much of what happened in 7th and 8th grade. But then I also tell myself, you have to give yourself grace, right? Like, I was a child.
Yeah, for sure.
It is what it is. I would go back and I wish I could unsay things to people. I wish I could undo things. But inevitably, I learned from who that girl was. But yeah, no, it was definitely easier to be a passive person in the community than stop people and correct them.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Those are just tough years, middle school, 7th, 8th, like puberty and all those other things that are, peer pressure. And it's just a mess most of the time. So yeah, definitely. I don't think I've ever asked anyone this, and maybe you can share and maybe you're not able to share, but is there anything in your personality or in your behaviors that your parents ever were like, I'm wondering why or where she gets that behavior, or you know what I'm saying? Something that might
for sure. I would say everything.
Yeah.
I had ADHD. My parents, I think they said I had oppositional defiant disorder. Who knows what it was?
Yeah.
I would say 7th, 9th, 10th. I would say 7 to 14. I was a terror, right? And my mom was not really prepared for it. and I wasn't really prepared for it. And I think, she couldn't pinpoint a lot of it because, right, we don't have medical records for me. There's no family history we can go back on. So when you're getting diagnosed with all of, different mental health issues, there's really just like shooting in the dark. You don't have a great. And a beautiful thing that my mother did is got me into therapy when I was 11. And I firmly believe in therapy. And I had gone to therapy my entire life, and I think it's amazing. It makes you very self-aware at a young age. It gives you a release, when you're fighting with your parents, to have a neutral third party. And my therapist was Jewish. It's so funny. Most of my doctors were Jewish. My therapists were Jewish. I didn't realize it, but my mom had sent us to Jewish people growing up. But I think it was, there were definite times where my mom, I had heard from my grandmother that she was also kind of a terror. So my mom was like, oh, you're acting so crazy. I'm like, yeah, well, I heard you left house at 15. Like, I'm 15 and I'm still here. So, there was definitely times where I was able to use that to my advantage too, to be like, no, I'm your kid. I'm a product of you. So that's why I'm acting so, bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say medical wise, I would say that was the toughest thing because it was like, you're really shooting in the dark when it comes to disabilities, autoimmune conditions, anything like that. Like, I look back and I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition 4 years ago. And maybe the symptoms I had growing up, certain things, somebody, if we had known, right, if we had contact with any family or any medical records, that could have been adjusted at a younger age. So, I mean, I think that was the tough thing. My mom kind of being like, where does this hyper kid come from? She used to call me Hyper Heather. And she would like sing a song about Hyper Heather because I'd be running around. And I think that was tough for her because she's not really a hyper woman. She's very like calm. So I think for her that was tough, you know. And my brother also had a lot of, you know, hyper actions too. So you have two children who are very hyper that are adopted. You don't have any medical records. And then you have my adopted sister, my sister, who is like the calmest, chillest person under any crisis. And it's like, she got such a different dynamic of children. So, I think for her that was probably tough.
And did you ever think about doing like the 23andMe thing, or have you done that?
I haven't. It's so funny you bring that up because my sister had given that as a gift for me and my ex-husband years and years ago.
Yeah.
But my ex-husband was like, we can't do that. We can't have our DNA in the system. He was like very anti it. So we never ended up doing it. So I never ended up doing it. And I remember, to this day, I'm going to do it eventually. But a part of me was also like, I don't really know if I want to know everything anymore. Like, I think I've kind of had my story is what it is. Other than what other regions I could be from, which would be cool. So I'm open to doing it. I just hadn't done it. But the main thing is that he didn't want to do it back then. He was, you know, very anti it. And I was like, I went along and I was like, okay. And my sister did do it. And I don't know if my brother ever did it. He might have done it. But it's definitely a plan I have in the future to do.
Who was the first Latina or Hispanic individual that you met that was like, wait a second, and you're like, maybe we have something in common here? Was there anybody in high school? Were there clubs, or was it college, or even later than that?
It was later than that, and it's funny because my parents really tried to have us like meet other Hispanic people. Like I think they adopted children with other people that adopted children, and we did get together with the other adopted children. But they're not really distinct memories in my life, right? Like I remember my other friends better than I could ever remember them, but I do see pictures of us together when we were kids. I just never really those aren't like profound memories. Mm-hmm. You know, I would say it was much later in life. I would say it was probably within the last 2 years that I've really found a huge group of Latinas. You know, when I was in college, I wasn't in any organizations that were Latina based. I actually think when I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure when I applied to college, I hit Caucasian. Like it was definitely much later. It was definitely in law school. I had seen that there was like a balsa, and there was supposed to be a LALSA at the school that I was in, which is like a Latin American student. It's for Latino lawyers. And there wasn't one at my school at that time. They didn't have like a teacher sponsor or something, so there wasn't one for my time there. But I had after law school, I had met a lot of people when I was interning at the DA's, and there were a lot of people that were like, "Hey, like you know that there's a community for you. You know that there's like you could be a part of it." And I'm like, "What?" I had no idea. And then I would say 2 years, like I said, once you know when my marriage ended, I was trying to really figure out who I am, right? I had lived for so many other people my entire life, and I was trying to figure out what I am and what I want to be. And I had always really tried hard to suppress any Latina part of me. And I said, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not it. I've had amazing privileges in life. I've had amazing mentors and amazing people that opened doors for me. And I want to do that for the next community of Hispanic lawyers. I had read the stat 2.5 and I said, that's crazy. That's crazy that there's only 2.5% of lawyers are Latino. That can't be right. That's crazy.
Wow.
And then I said, no, that's got to be right because I don't ever see ones that look like me. And I realized that mentorship plays a big part in it, right? Like I got jobs because of people I knew. I was invited into rooms because of people my parents knew. And I went down this path of saying, I'm really going to do what I can. I have an obligation and a duty and a privilege to give back to the Latina community. So I'm going to do whatever I can to do it. And that's, you know, kind of when I started getting more involved. And then, you know, earlier this year, I started the series, and it's you know, taken off. And now I'm like, I do whatever I can. I love to meet other amazing Latinas out here killing it, Latinos, Latinx. But yeah, no, I would say like that's pretty much when it really took off, would be when people really said to me, like, you got to really figure out what you want in life. And I said, now I have a clean slate. I have something brand new. I can define myself. I'm not defined by being a wife. I'm not defined by being the daughter of a scientist. I'm not defined by, my adolescent years where I was rowdy as heck. I'm creating my own identity, and this is the person I want to be.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Did it change your relationship with your family at all?
I think it's changed the way that I have communicated with people, like especially my sister, right? She was raised by my dad, and my dad has always been a hippie and always been very, very Caucasian. That's just what he is. And my sister, I think, being raised in that environment and really didn't see herself as being Latina, and she is the most Latina looking out of the three of us. So it was a rough thing, and I shared this to you before, and it's a funny story, so I'll share it. I told her I was going to tell it anyway. Once I really started getting into more of the Latina thing, we were both dating because I was single at the time, and she was like, I've never dated outside my race. And I said, Jessica, you've only dated outside your race. You've only dated white men. What do you mean? And it was like, looking at her face, the response to that was like, she was like, that can't be it. And I'm like, no, babe, we're not them. We're not one of them. Like, we're different. And it was like, talking and communicating with her has definitely been the thing that's changed the most, just because I've gotten more involved in the Latina community. I go to more Latina functions. I do the showcase where I showcase Latina-owned brands and businesses. And I'm like, Jessica, let's use this stuff instead. Let's go to this event, or, and she has a lot of Latino friends too. So it's been great, because I think it kind of helped us connect more, because, when I got divorced, I ended up moving in with her, and our relationship changed, right? Because we didn't grow up together. Like I had said, we didn't live with each other during our teenage years. So we got to really like relive with each other and experience each other. And then also I went through this kind of cultural shift with her, and being like, hey, no, this is really what we are. Like, and I see her, and, I think it's crazy when you can tell we were raised very differently, because she's just so positive all the time, and so like has the best intentions, and think everyone else has the best intentions. And I'm like more like my mom, where I'm like skeptical, and I'm like, no. They probably don't. And just remember, we're not one of them. Please always remember that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who raised us or what anything says. We are not one of them. And I needed her to know that, because I think for me, I'm like, that's the set. You have to have that knowledge to know how to move in your moves next, right? Like, I'm not saying be terrified every day. Yeah. I'm not saying, act differently. I'm just saying be aware, be observant, notice that, people might look at you differently when we walk into a store. And, I had never thought of it that way. And I went into a store with somebody I was working with at the time who was Hispanic. We ended up walking in like a really high-end store. And she was like, I feel uncomfortable. I was like, why? And she was like, I just don't think we're meant to be here. And it was like, that's when it really hit me, when I'm like, man, I just have lived in such a privileged life that I didn't realize that people might look at me differently. People might think of me differently, no matter how I dress, what my profession is. I'm not going to be them. And I really wanted to make sure that like my sister saw that. So I think that was the biggest shift that happened with us, and the biggest, different line of communication that we have.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. What, just to kind of summarize that, what sort of wisdom would you pass on to, someone who might be in a similar position that is young, that might listen to this, about the idea of not being enough?
I think
owning your space, even, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to live boldly and exist loudly. Like, you are going to be whoever you choose to define yourself as. And at the end of the day, what the things that make you different are what make you so powerful. Like, I'm blessed that my mom was a powerhouse of a woman and made sure that I acted that way every single day. And I always say to my sister, and I say to anyone that's willing to listen, everyone has this ability. You just have to be willing to take the risk to say exactly how you feel. And it's so important in the young community. It's so important with young Latinas to ask for what you want and take what you deserve, because no one is giving it to us. No one is ever going to hand it to us, because as whatever like group you grow up in or whatever you affiliate with, at the end of the day, we are here for ourselves. We're here for each other. We have to make sure that you have your own back and that your community has your back. And if you're willing to say people's names when they're not in the room, the same way they're willing to say yours, that's what matters to me, right? Like, I've always lived in this notion of collaboration over competition. I can't imagine competing with other people in every aspect of my life. I say, if one of us wins, we all win. The game in this is visibility. The end goal is visibility for all of us. I promote other lawyers. I promote, other businesses. I promote anybody who I think resonates with me. And I think in doing that, they're not taking away from me. Me promoting another lawyer isn't taking food out of my mouth. But what it is doing is saying, hey, there's more of us out there. Look at everyone else that's out here. So, I would say that's my best advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about how you found the work you do, and then also, some of the other organizations that you work with and your promotion business. Tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up there.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a lawyer. I'm a personal injury lawyer. My best friend's dad, when I was growing up, was a personal injury lawyer. I got to see him do an arbitration when I was 14, and I fell in love with the art of storytelling and the art of being able to advocate for another person. I said, I'm pretty argumentative and I'm pretty persuasive. How can I use this as best as I can? And, I became a lawyer, and it's been great. I had interned at the DA's working with victims of domestic violence. I interned with family court and PFA, contempt for PFA cases. And I had really found a real purpose in working with victims. And I said, well, how can I do this in a different scale? Because I'm going to be completely honest, like, that's not going to pay my bills. That's not going to pay my student loans. So I found personal injury, and personal injury, I get to represent victims, against, big insurance companies. And for me, it felt like the right fit. And then when it comes to the other stuff that I do, so everything I've gotten in the last year has been from Threads. It's been an amazing platform. Yeah. I really enjoy it. Had posted that I really wanted to showcase his like just Latina actually is what I initially wrote. Latina-owned businesses for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I thought one person would respond. A lot of people responded, and it ended up spiraling into this thing where then I was like, no, let's expand this to Latinos. And then I was like, well, I'm going to expand it to Latinx, what? Yeah. And then I was like, well, I'm doing these businesses, but what about professionals? Like, what about people like not like, when you think of a doctor, are you thinking of a Hispanic person? Well, no, let me change that narrative. And it really all started, my whole mission was, when people think of soap, they think of a big box brand, right? When they think of, hydration, they think of, I don't know, like Liquid IV, whatever it is. And I said, what can I do to change that narrative? And I said, all right, I'm going to find everyday items that we all use, but I'm going to find them in a Latino, or Latinx business. And that's what I've done. And it's really been amazing. Like now when I think of soap, I think of, Naked Bar Soaps, which is a Latina-owned company. When I think of
that's great.
Hydration, I think of Salud, which is a Latina-owned business, which it does, has a whole bunch of, stuff in the wellness space for tons of different drinks. So it's been, candles, shampoo. I just did something with Aqua, and I probably pronounced that wrong. And I always tell people I'm so sorry when I pronounce their businesses wrong, because I don't speak Spanish and I'm really bad at, attempting to do it. But they're a hair care company. They created a hairline for Latina hair and curly hair. And I really wanted that to be kind of the legacy that I leave behind, is just saying like, we can get everyday items from our own people. we don't need to outsource. We can get it from the people within our community. And yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. I've got to work with amazing brands, amazing small businesses. You know, a lot of them I thought like I would only be having small brands, but then like Salut's a really big company, and I never really thought they would have answered. You know, I got stuff from Tia Lupita, which is another really, you know, pretty well-known brand. I mean, it's been amazing, the outpour of people being willing to work with me. And I always tell people, like, I don't want any money from it. That's not it at all. No one pays me to make these ads. I get, or, you know, my showcase, no one pays me for it. I'm gifted a lot of this stuff, and I always put that in there, but no one pays me to do it, and I won't take a dime from it. And I always said that, like, you know, I don't want, you know, affiliate links. I don't want commissioned links, because I don't want, this has never been about the money for me. It's never been about it. It's been about giving voice to to anyone that I can do it for. And yeah, I mean, I found amazing people in the Latina community out of New York. I've been doing a lot of stuff. You know, I also do modeling. I started modeling the last year, and it's been amazing. I found amazing Afro Latinas in the modeling space. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and I'm excited because I had said like I was just doing it for Hispanic Heritage Month, and then I put out like, no, I'm gonna keep doing this for the rest of my life. You know, I'm gonna do it for as long as I can, as long as my time permits, because it is hard.
Yeah.
Like, shout out to the full-time content creators who can do this and a full-time job, because it has been so hard. And even, you know, what you do, like I started the podcasting, it's, you know, the videos, like it's so hard. I've been interviewing Latina professionals, right? And I remember being like saying to my Gen Z assistant, like, oh, you can cut this video. It'll take you like a couple minutes. She's like, no, Hev, don't tell people 2 to 3 week turnaround. Tell them months. Like, and I was like, what? I was like, I thought it's just like, I just, you know, record the video and then you just kind of like make magic. She's like, no, Hev, that's not how it works at all. So it's been an amazing ride, but honestly, I'm so grateful for all the people that have worked with me and wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, you have a very infectious personality. I could see why it's going so well for you and why people enjoy being around you. Couple questions before we wrap up here. One would be, you know, you talk about this evolution into the person you are now, you know, really embracing, you know, your roots or your birth ethnicity. Do you feel any, like, I guess I would say, is it maybe shame that you've gone this way, and then you look back and you're like, well, I had this kind of like whole life as a Jewish kid, you know? Is there any of that, or guilt? I guess it would be guilt, because Jewish guilt. Would there be any Jewish guilt there?
It's guilt. It's definitely guilt, because you know what it is? It's that I allowed other people to define who I was for so long, right? Like, and it was easier to be, you know, I'm also plus size. So it's always been for me, like, I've always had this, you know, drilled into my brain that I'm supposed to make as little noise and take up as little space as possible. And I fought it as much as I could, and I really did, but it was easy a lot of the times when you're afraid people are going to look at you to just kind of go along with whatever's happening. And I think I did that for such a long time. And, you know, when I got divorced, when my marriage ended, I said, this is it. This is the moment. This is the moment I have to define myself. And I had guilt. I had never done it before, because I could have done all this stuff in law school. I could have done stuff in undergrad. I could have done way more interning, way more volunteer work, anything else I think I could have done. I could have learned Spanish. You know, there's just tons of things I could have done to connect with my culture more. But I said, I can't punish myself forever. And at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I can. And that's going to be what people remember me for. Not the 13 or 20 years that I did nothing. I'm going to do it as long as I can. And that'll be the frame that people remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Like your legacy. And I always ask everyone, and I just released some clips of, you know, some of the earlier episodes of the answers to the "What's your recipe for world peace?"
Gosh, that's a toughie. I would say a woman at the helm. I would say absolutely a woman at the helm of anything. You know, I think that we are level-headed people. And, you know, I think it's tough because we live in a world where there's so much hatred and there's so much consumerism and capitalism that runs everything. And I'd love to say, like, we could all live in a great world if we all give back, but like that's just not the case, right? The case is that people are going to push other people out so that they can eat. And I would just say, for me, world peace is like just doing everything with grace, man. Like I saw a quote the other day. It was like a TikTok video, and it was like somebody saying, give everybody grace because it's everybody's first time living, and it's their first time feeling. And that really hit me. That. It really hit me because I could say, there have been so many times in my upbringing where I'm like, God, my mom did that wrong, or God, this person did this wrong. And then I looked at it and I said, that's true. This is her first time existing. This is her first time on this earth. This is my first time on this earth. This is my first time experiencing this exact moment in time. And if I don't give myself grace, and if I don't give other people grace, then it's too easy to fall into a world of constantly criticizing someone else's behavior. So I would say if people could do everything with grace and acknowledge that it's everyone's first time doing anything, first time feeling, first time experiencing, that I think we could definitely do it better. But again, I would say a woman at the helm.
Oh, I love that. It almost brought me to tears. I really, really like that quote. Thank you so much for sharing that. And last but not least, where do you exist in social media? What would you like to promote?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. Instagram is my biggest thing. I'm on TikTok as well, but I'm going to be honest, I barely use it. Instagram is my biggest thing. It's Heather_RXOXO. And there's tons of stuff I do. I have another Instagram, Heather Reese Law, because I also am starting to promote more of my law stuff. But really, Heather RXOXO is my big passion. That's where my Instagram series is for promoting Latino, Latina, and Latinx businesses and professionals. So that's the big one I would tell people to go follow me on. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. There's tons of other questions I could probably ask, but I think we covered a lot of ground. And I really appreciate you taking time out today and that we got to connect because we've been trying to connect back and forth. So thank you so much. No, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love the podcast. And honestly, it's so great to, get to be on one. And when anybody gives anybody, a microphone and a voice, I'm always like, let me do my best to try to do justice to everyone. So I really do appreciate you having me on. Yeah, you knocked it out of the park today. So thank you. Thank you. This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Eviton Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Eviton represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Eviton family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Eviton_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Eviton Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.